Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be looking at some of your unpopular bookish opinions and reacting to them and letting you know if I agree with you or if I disagree with you. So I did ask for some of your popular opinions on my Instagram story a little while ago. I was actually originally collecting these for a podcast episode, which, okay, little sidebar here, a little bit of a self-promotion. If you have not seen yet, I have actually officially launched my podcast with Bestie Freya. It's called Once Upon a Time Zone Podcast, and I'm actually obsessed with the name that we came up with. I think it's so cute. If you guys don't know, I live in Canada, Freya lives in Australia, so we are literally, like, I don't know if you could be any more different in terms of your time zones. We are quite literally across the world. So we thought Once Upon a Time Zone as our podcast name was a really cute play on words because obviously we have Once Upon a Time because we're talking about books and stories and all that, and then we have, instead of just time, it's time zone because we are so many time zones away from each other. So yeah, our podcast is officially launched. We do have a separate YouTube channel for it. We also, of course, have it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. You should be able to find us over there. So very exciting. We do have a few episodes up already, and one of them is the episode where we react to your unpopular opinions. But we actually didn't have time to get to all of your unpopular opinions because you submitted so many of them, which, first of all, thank you so much. But we both did just kind of feel bad for not being able to get through all of them. So we've decided to make these supplemental videos to go through some more of your unpopular opinions that you submitted. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So grab a snack, get cozy, and let's just chat about some stuff. Now, this first one is actually a really interesting one for me. It's not so much about books, but more about book content. So this first unpopular opinion is some book content creators are doing it just for the money. I feel like I have a somewhat unique perspective on this as a bookish content creator myself. I would say this is probably true. I would probably have to agree. I do see, I'm not gonna name names, okay? I'm never gonna name names. But I do think with anything that becomes very popular, like with the current, I don't know, movement of reading becoming popular and cool again, there's obviously people who are gonna jump on the bandwagon and people who are just going to sort of join that trend to ride the popularity wave and to make money. So I definitely see that side of things. The other side of it that I see, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I would say this is probably the case for most of the bookish content creators that like I engage with myself or that are like in my circles. I would say it's a mix of both. For me personally, I have always loved reading. Ever since I was a kid, I would just spend hours and hours and hours and hours like in bed reading all the time. I've always loved books. I've always loved making videos. If you didn't know, I actually studied film in school, film and computer science, and my full-time job, you know, previously before I decided to try content creation full-time was actually in the film industry. So I've always had a knack, a passion, you could say, for creating video. And so creating bookish content for me just seems like a very natural fit. Like I've always loved making videos. I've always loved reading books. So there's definitely a part of that where I'm like, I just love making book videos because I love books and I love reading. But there always is that business side of things. And if you've ever tried content creation, especially long form content, okay, it takes a lot of time. I would definitely say shorts, like TikToks, all of that, definitely less time consuming. Making like a 20 to 30 minute long video, sometimes an hour long video. So my videos have been really long lately. It takes hours and hours and hours, days and days and days. And it is rewarding when you finally start getting paid for something that you've like spent so much free hours, like time on. It feels really nice. And I would say like to be able to keep it going, being monetized helps a lot, especially in this economy when living and like life is just so expensive in general. I think it's kind of a fine line where you feel good in that balance between how much of this am I doing for passion and how much am I doing for the business side of it. If you guys haven't been following me for that long, you may remember me from fitness content days. And I actually started fitness content back in 2020 during COVID. Social media is never something I expected to make money off of. So when I first started it, I was just doing it out of like pure fun. I was just bored during COVID and I was doing a bunch of home workouts, and I just thought I would document my experience of trying different home workouts and just seeing if I thought they were effective for me or not. So that's how I actually started with social media. I had one video that went viral and then it just kind of went from there. At one point, I started feeling burnt out, and it was all due to the fitness content. If you, I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on this prompt, but I feel like it relates to me so much that I'm just yapping away and I can't stop. But if you've ever been like in any sort of a spotlight online, it can be so tough out there. It can be so tough. And whatever you do online, you're gonna have people who don't like you. Like, I know there's people out there that don't like me and don't like my content, and like, that's okay. You know, I'm not gonna be able to please everyone. But I think when I was doing fitness content, the hate was a lot more triggering for me, because just naturally there were a lot of people who started commenting on my body. And, you know, for me, someone who's always struggled with body image and body dysmorphia, I am especially sensitive to that. And so I think just to protect my mental health, I had to step away from the fitness world. I still work out in my own time. I just don't document my experience of it anymore. So I decided to stop making fitness content, but I still wanted to make videos. Like, I still love making videos first and foremost. So I was like, okay, what else am I passionate about that I could see myself doing long-term, sustainably, and like enjoying my life while also being able to still make videos? And that turned out to be bookish content. So that's where we are now. But just going back to the prompt to wrap this all up, yes, I do think there are probably quite a few bookish content creators who do it just for the money, but I would say there's also a large, great number of us that do it like kind of split. Half and half, you know, like we do it because we love it, but it's also nice to see income. And also, you guys, I don't know if anyone knows this, but YouTube doesn't pay that much. It genuinely doesn't pay that much. Like, I'm struggling to pay my bills just doing social media full time. I think there's kind of this misconception that all influencers or content creators make a lot of money, and that is definitely true for a certain few, like just like, I don't know, the top influencers definitely make so much money, but for the rest of us, we don't actually make that much. I'm actually making like a third of my salary of my full-time job that I'm not doing anymore. Like, it is a big pay cut, and YouTube does not actually pay that much. So just thought I'd mention that too. The money is very hard to make on social media. Okay, now that we spent so much time on the first prompt, let's do something a little bit more fun. Strange names in relationships are even worse during smut scenes. I think you guys know I have to agree with this one. There have been so many bad nicknames out there in romances, in romantices. I think I've had a lot of like nicknames that I've disliked in books, but just the one that keeps popping up in my head is Lightning Bug from the Trial of the Sun Queen series. I don't know, it felt so out of the blue. It felt so unfitting to our character, who's supposed to be this like fierce female main character. I agree. I think nicknames I can kind of stomach, but once it also infiltrates its way into a smut scene, definitely makes me cringe even more. Okay, UK covers are almost always better looking than the US ones. I agree. I think there are just a few US covers, and like me as a Canadian, I do get the US covers here. I don't know, I feel like they always fit the book more, where here a lot of the times the covers may not, like, they just don't match the actual tone and content of the book inside. And yeah, I don't know, I just like UK covers more. Like the Once Upon a Broken Heart covers, the UK covers are stunning on those. So gorgeous. I also think, I think the Favorites cover, I think the UK cover is much better than the one here. Oh, I think a lot of the Brandon Sanderson covers actually as well. I like the UK covers a lot more, like the Mistborn series in particular. But I will say, I think the Emily Henry covers, I like the US versions better. I think. I don't know if it's like one of those cases of like you just want what you can't have. It's like just always looking like the grass is always greener on the other side, but I don't know. I agree with this one. Okay, this one is interesting. Dark romance is just dark, not romantic or cute at all. I'm gonna be honest, this one might be a little hard for me to comment on because I haven't read that many dark romances. So I'm coming from a place where I genuinely, like, I've read maybe like 2 or 3 dark romance-ish books in my life, and I think all the dark romance books I've read have been fantasy dark romance. I've never, I don't think, read like a contemporary dark romance. The closest to a contemporary dark romance I've gotten is probably, what was it called? Oh gosh, the Ruinous Love Trilogy, like Butcher and Blackbird, which I know that's not actually in the dark romance genre. It's more like a dark rom-com, which is very different because it's a lot more humorous. So yeah, I don't know how much I can comment on this because I feel like I'm not coming from like an experienced, educated position on this one because I haven't experienced it so much. But what I can say from the dark romances I've read, for me, they kind of go too far on that line. Like, I enjoy an enemies to lovers when there's a good reason for the enemies being enemies in the first place. And then, I don't know, like once an enemies to lovers, for example, steps over a line that for me is like, you can't cross back over that line. You've gone too far. The love interest in my eyes will be irredeemable. And so I feel like with dark romances, a lot of the time they do go past that line. Like that's kind of the point. And for me personally, yeah, like I wouldn't see that as romantic or cute at all, but I know like so many dark romance lovers, and it's probably just something I am not understanding. It's just something that's not clicking in my head. So I guess I like mostly agree with this, just coming from someone who hasn't read that many dark romances, but I do know a lot of people who love dark romance, and maybe this would be a good conversation to have with someone who does love dark romance. Buying books and reading books are two separate hobbies. Yes, no, maybe. Buying books and reading books can be the same hobby for some people, but there is a line that can be crossed where the person just becomes a book collector. Like when I see people with, I don't know, like more than 5 different editions of the same book, you have become a book collector. You can be a reader too. These things overlap, but book collecting and book buying it's definitely a separate hobby. So I guess, yeah, I agree. But I also think there can be an overlap. Like you can be a book collector and you can be a book reader as well. Last year, you guys probably know this, you've been on the ride along with me, but last year I went on these huge book buying binges, and it's because I discovered Book Outlet for the first time. If you don't know what Book Outlet is, it is this really, really cheap kind of like warehouse type of a shop. They used to have a physical location, but I think they're online only now, but they basically get overstock of books from, I don't know, bookstores, from publishers, and then sell them for super cheap. So I discovered Book Outlet last year, and I did so many Book Outlet hauls where I was buying like 15 books at a time, 20 books at a time, and I ended up accumulating so many books on my physical TBR that honestly I just got so overwhelmed by it all. And since then I've tried to really stop doing that because I need to read my actual physical TBR before, I don't know, binge buying a whole other set of books. But at the same time, you know, as I was buying all of these books last year, I was also reading quite a few of them. Like I ended up, I think at the end of the year I had read 150-ish books. And so yeah, you could say I was a book buyer as a hobby, but I was also a book reader. Long way of saying, yes, these are two different hobbies, but you can take part in both hobbies at the same time. Okay, this is another one kind of more about like the bookish online presence. The BookTok community is way too judgy about what other people are reading and how much. I agree with this. I do see merits on both sides in terms of like some of the critique I've seen, but sometimes it's like, why do you care so much about what someone else is reading? You know, like why does it matter? Like sure, you can judge someone if you don't like a particular genre and you see someone else just reading that genre. You're naturally maybe gonna feel a little bit judgy, but like why not keep it to yourself? Like why does it really matter? I think reading should be fun. And that's another like whole discourse and argument that people have, is whether reading should be just fun or if reading should be educational. I think you can read for a multitude of reasons, and I think there's a lot of people who want to read for fun and read for escapism, and I think that is completely okay. Like it's a hobby at the end of the day, and some people can take it a lot more seriously. Some people can read for education, some people can read to be more like productive and want to learn new things about life, but for some people, reading is like a substitute for watching a movie or watching Netflix, like watching a show. It can be just pure entertainment, and I think treating reading as that is also completely fine. And I don't know, we were just talking about differentiating hobbies. Maybe reading for education and improving yourself is a separate hobby altogether compared to reading just for fun. And I do see a lot of judgment on TikTok specifically. I think on TikTok, people can be a lot more outspoken, I guess. I do think I've seen a lot of judgment, a lot, like too much judgment, where I'm like, you know what, if someone's having fun, just leave them alone. I'm sure there are people out there that judge me for what I read, but you know what? Just do you. Just read what you want to read. And I think that's completely okay. Okay, this next one is, I have commitment issues with books. I will choose to read half a book and choose it's not the time. I cannot relate. I absolutely cannot relate to this because I am the complete opposite of you. I think I've said this several times, but I'm so stubborn. I am the type of person who is not able to DNF a book. I'm physically unable. Like, once I open a book and read more than, let's say, the first page, I'm committed. I need to zone in. Like, once I've added it to my Goodreads as like in my currently reading list, or like on my Fable as my currently reading, I am seeing that book all the way through. And I absolutely cannot relate, especially if you're saying like you can read half the book and then decide it's really not the time. That baffles me, because then when you jump back to the book, like let's say you're like a month later or a few months later even, I don't, like, how long do you spend before you go back to the book? That's my follow-up question for you. But when you do decide to go back to the book, do you start over again to like build up that momentum, or like in case you've forgotten details, or do you just pick right up back at that halfway point and just hope that you've retained it all? Or maybe you just have a super memory. I have so many questions. I most definitely could not do this. I also know quite a few people who read multiple books, so many books at the same time, and kind of like pick one up, read a chapter, put it down, pick another one up, read a chapter, put it down. And then it might take you like a few months to finish that book. But by the time you finish that book, you've also read like 20 other books kind of concurrently with it. I cannot fathom. My brain cannot fathom. I feel like when I'm reading, I need to hyper focus on those characters, on that plot, or I will just feel so scattered. So I absolutely cannot relate to this, but I would love to kind of pick at your brain and see how it works. This next one is, I'm tired of the strong, bold FMCs. Give me more soft, shy, anxious FMCs. I think we kind of touched on this actually in the podcast episode. There was another prompt that was quite similar to this one, but I definitely agree. I love a nice sassy FMC that is, very trained, very experienced at combat, can kick around some people. Absolutely love that. But I do also love variety in my characters. And I think especially with, let's say, the romantasy genre, we have gotten to this point where there are so many characters that are just the same. Copy, paste, same thing, maybe a slightly different font. I would say they're even in the same font, but maybe you've added, I don't know, you've put it in bold or something. And because of that, I do really, really, really appreciate when we get a softer FMC, especially as someone who is a softer person myself. I would never call myself bold. I would never call myself outgoing. I would never call myself sassy by any means. I just relate so much more to the softer, more shy, anxious female characters. And you don't always necessarily have to relate to a character to enjoy a book or to understand that character. I think a good author will they will establish that connection with you and that character if they've done it well, even if you have nothing in common with them. But it is always easier to connect to a character that is more similar to you. And so I love the softer characters. This one's just kind of funny. My sister doesn't like floppy paperbacks. I love that you're not even like exposing your own unpopular opinion, you're exposing your sister. And I don't agree with your sister at all. I highly dislike a stiff paperback because I'm also the type of person who hates cracking a spine. And so when you're holding a stiff paperback and trying to read it, if the spine is stiff, how do you open it without cracking the spine? Floppy is so much better. This one's kind of funny. Morally gray men are not hot. I think I disagree with this one. I do think though that just because a man is morally gray, that doesn't automatically make him hot, but I think just like blanket statement in general, I think most people and most characters are a little bit morally gray, and I wouldn't say like their morally grayness would make them not hot, if that makes sense. I personally love reading a non-perfect character, and so because of that, I obviously love reading about morally gray characters. They don't even necessarily have to be the main love interest, but I just love reading about a well-rounded, imperfect character. They are just overall more interesting for me to read, and some of them I would say are quite attractive still. But yeah, I can definitely see the oversaturation of morally gray men in the book space these days, and I can see why that could be really exhausting. But I think I have to overall disagree. Ooh, another one about MMCs. This one says, I want more body diversity in MMCs, even short and fat guys can be hot. Yeah, 100%. Here's the funny thing about me is when I am reading a book, especially a romantic book, I feel like I don't actually pay attention to the physicalities when they're being described. Like, you're right, like every romance book will be like, oh, he had chiseled abs, he had like an 8-pack, and when I touched it, it was like rock hard. He has broad shoulders, he has like a jawline that could cut me. And they all seem just kind of very much the same, very generic. And so I think because of that, I just don't pay attention to it. But you're totally right. Like, that is not a realistic portrayal of a male human at all. We all have these softer bits in our bodies, and I think it would be interesting to read a book that describes a male main character or a love interest that's, I don't know, is different. I agree with this. I like this point. But I think in general would just prefer less descriptive of bodies. For me, like, I don't know, the parts that get me in a romance, and I know like a lot of people have different preferences in romance, but I usually focus and pay more attention on the emotional connection, on the actual experiences that the two characters are going through together. So I think like altogether, if we could just have less physical descriptions in general, maybe that's where I stand. Maybe that's what I would want. And I know there's going to be so many people who disagree with me on that, but that's my opinion on this topic. Another one about BookTok. This one says BookTok isn't bad, you're just in the wrong space. I think I do agree. I do agree on this that you have to kind of train your algorithm. There are a lot of creators out there that read a wide range of books, and you just have to train your algorithm to find them. So if you stop engaging with the content that you don't like, if you want to leave a hate comment, maybe just don't. Because you're also, by leaving a comment, you're training your algorithm to show you more of those videos. So if you want to find a space online that you're not just angry at all the time, just don't engage with the content you don't like. Just keep scrolling. There's also actually, I don't know if this exists on YouTube, but on TikTok, there is a feature that if you're not interested in a video, you can click not interested, and that will help your algorithm learn what you don't like and what you don't want to see. So if you see, I don't know, someone who is reading books that you're not interested in at all, just click don't interested, and maybe your algorithm will slowly start to change and find you the creators that you do enjoy. And there are definitely wonderful, wonderful spaces to be in all platforms on social media. You may just need to stop hate watching things. Ooh, this one's a little saucy too. It's weird for grown adults to read YA romance. Ooh. I personally don't love YA romance just because I can't relate to it really. I, for example, just binge read the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy because of season 3 coming out, and I just... the characters felt so young and immature, and it was really difficult for me to read because of that reason. But I do still read a lot of, let's say, YA fantasy with romance subplots, so I do still love a good YA book mixed in every once in a while. What I will say about this is I think it really depends on the reason you are reading that YA book. If you are a grown adult who just loves YA books because they're fun, they're easy to read, they're cute, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think there is a line that can be drawn where you start, I don't know, like self-inserting into that YA character, into that YA situation, and start lusting over like a YA love interest. I think that might be a little bit weird. If you're reading a YA romance for that reason, I think that is a little bit odd. I will have to agree, I will have to admit. But if you're reading a YA book that, you know, is really cute and feels really nostalgic and just kind of for comfort, I think that's completely okay. I think it's kind of similar to when we go back to our favorite TV shows, let's say, like TV series. Like I will watch the Gilmore Girls forever and ever and ever, and I will love it forever and ever and ever. So I will say I half agree with this one. I think it really largely depends on your intention on why you're reading the certain YA romance book. This next one is every reader should have literary classics that they genuinely enjoy on some level. Oh, as someone who has not had a great track record with classics, I somewhat disagree with this. I think this goes back to the prompt that we talked about earlier in this video, where it really depends on why you're reading. I think some people genuinely just want to read to get that same feeling as, you know, if you're watching TV, if you're watching like a reality TV show or something. Some people just want to escape and have fun and relax. And I do think that classics obviously require more effort, require more brain power, and some people just don't read for that. I do sometimes read because I want to engage my brain, obviously, and I do sometimes read to turn my brain off, so I understand both sides, but I haven't had a good track record with classics. That being said, there have been classics that I do love. And I do know that there are so many classics out there that fall under so many different genres and they can read very differently. So I don't think people should read classics just to read classics. Like if you feel like you're being forced to read a classic and you just you don't feel compelled to read it at all, you're just reading it because people are forcing you to and you feel like you should, I don't agree with that. But I think if there is someone who wants to read classics and wants to delve into that, there will be something out there that you will love. I'm kind of mixed on this one. I don't think every reader needs to love a literary classic, but I think if a reader were to go out there and to search for a classic, I think they would be able to find one they love, no matter what their literary book preferences are. I think you will still be able to find a classic that you can resonate with and that you will enjoy. But I don't know, is it a hot take that I don't think every reader needs to do that? Needs to go back and find a classic that they love? I don't think it's mandatory, but maybe that's a hot take. Okay, this one's funny. Friends to lovers is one of the worst book tropes. I disagree. I think if you said this to me last year, I'd be like, yeah, I totally agree, but I've loved some friends to lovers tropes. I have recently read some contemporary romances where the friends to lovers happens in such an adorable, endearing, fuzzy way that I love friends to lovers now. I do really love it as a trope. I think in terms of reading romance as well, if everything is presented to you as an enemies to lovers or a rivals to lovers or a grumpy sunshine or just something very oppositional, I think it is really refreshing to read friends to lovers. And the path to get there can be very different from an enemies or rivals to lovers as well. So I think I like both. I think I like reading a mix of both. I've recently loved a friends to lovers more than an enemies to lovers, just because I think a lot of the enemies to lovers that I've read recently have felt very much the same. Like I've read this before, where friends to lovers to me at this moment in time feels more new and more refreshing because I haven't read as many friends to lovers. But I think it's kind of like one of those cycles. Like if I start reading more friends to lovers, I may start preferring enemies to lovers more again because now I'm bored of friends to lovers and I'll just keep going back and forth, I think, forever and ever and ever. And I think that's kind of natural for someone who's like a mood reader. I just need to switch things up once in a while. Another one about book tropes says, I don't like knowing all the tropes of books. It feels like a spoiler. I agree. I really, really agree. I think nowadays with marketing being pushed with just tropes first, I don't like this. I don't really like this form of book marketing. I think some tropes are fine for this in terms of setting. Let's say we actually, in our next podcast episode that will come after this, we do have a book trope episode coming out. So also another reason to go subscribe to our new podcast channel or on Spotify or wherever. Some tropes are fine to be spoiled. Things like the setting your book is in, like an academic setting or a boarding school setting, is a trope that can be spoiled. I mean, not spoiled. I mean, you can say that in the marketing blurb without it being a spoiler. Also, general plot things like a heist trope or elements to a story like a dragon trope. I think those are okay, but certain things like Freya actually made a point of this in our future podcast episode is that something like fated mates can be such a spoiler. Like if you are advertising your book as a fated mates story, isn't that the biggest spoiler in the world? Because the moment that your love interests become fated mates and realize that is generally such a big moment, like a big reveal, an aha moment in those types of stories, that if you blurb that out in the marketing thing, you've just spoiled this massive part in your romance plotline, haven't you? I definitely agree with this. And also a lot of tropes that act to add a conflict in, I don't know, the second half of the book or the third act conflict. If you're putting that in your marketing blurb, you've just spoiled your entire third act conflict. Everyone knows what's going to happen. So yeah, definitely can be very spoilery in that case. I think there's also a similar unpopular opinion in this list that says something like, why can't I find it? Oh, here. On BookTube, people who share too many quotes or say every single character personality trait is spoiling the book. I agree with that. I try my best to not share quotes too much when I'm doing my reviews because I do think that spoils a lot of things. There can be quotes you can read and out of context, they are not spoilers at all because people who haven't read the book will have no idea what you're talking about. So I think stuff like that is okay, but when you're reading out like multiple quotes from a book, you kind of spoil the effect because sometimes when you read a quote that is so impactful, that's kind of the whole point of it, is that when you read it, it hits you in that certain moment in that story. But if you know that quote is coming, it can negatively impact the effect that it has on you. So I agree with this. And yeah, also saying every single character personality trait, getting to know your character is a big part of the experience of reading a book, like slowly getting to know your character as you see them decide things, move through the plot. You just see their actions and their actions form their overall character. And so if someone's giving you all of that and saying all that stuff to you before you've read the book, a lot of that development will leave you and you will go into the book with a preconceived idea of who the character is going to be, and you won't actually be able to make your own judgments on that character once you've heard someone talk about them in that way. So I totally agree. Shall we do one more? Okay, let's end on a fun little one. This one says, I hate fake dating. Yeah, I agree. I used to really hate fake dating. Like when I first started getting into romance books, I hated every single fake dating book I read. It was only Funny Story from Emily Henry that convinced me that fake dating could be good, but I think overall I still don't love the trope. I just think in terms of romance books, like all romance books are predictable, right? Like you know your main character, you know the love interest, and you know that they're going to be together by the end of the book. That's the whole point of a romance book. A romance book is not supposed to be unpredictable, but I think especially with the fake dating trope, you already know everything that is going to happen in that story. You know that the arrangement's going to happen just kind of out of convenience or necessity. You know that, at first they're going to hate each other, let's say, but you know that they're also going to start growing on each other once they like meet the families and meet their inner circles and see them in a different space. They're going to start being like, ooh, I'm peeling all these layers back. You know the third act conflict is going to be a whole miscommunication thing of like one person being like, yeah, let's actually stop fake dating and real date, and the other person's going to be like, what? No, I'm scared. This was supposed to be a fake situation. It wasn't supposed to be for real. And after that third act conflict, they're going to get back together and realize their ways and that they've actually loved each other this entire time. The entire story you already know. And with romance, because the ending is predictable, a good romance needs a good arc. It needs to have surprises in the way that you get there. And that is how you differentiate a good romance versus just like an average romance. And with the fake dating trope, it's so hard to add those surprises in there because you already know the entire trajectory of the story. Trajectory? Did I actually just say trajectory? Trajectory of the story. Anyways, I think we have been yapping on for far too long, so I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know an unpopular opinion of yours that maybe we didn't talk about today. And maybe if you liked this video, we could do another video talking about more unpopular opinions. Remember to check out the podcast. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We honestly have episodes planned out to the literal end of this year. We have a lot of fun ideas coming up, so definitely stay tuned. There's a lot of fun, exciting stuff coming over there, so definitely check out the podcast. But if you also like me over here, subscribe and do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!